Hello, everyone. My name is Qicheng. I'm from Acto of Carnegie Mellon University. This work I'm going to present today is about diagnosis outcome prediction on limited data via transferred random forest. This work mainly focuses on logic diagnosis, which is a key step in yield learning, with the aim to localize and characterize manufacturing defects. A typical flow starts with manufacturing tests. The chips with defects will fail the test with a fail log generated to record the failing responses of the chip. And the fail logs, together with the circuit description, are then sent to a software diagnosis tool. The tool then outputs a list of defect candidates with respect to certain locations within the chip. And then PFA can be applied to inspect the potential defect locations for further analysis. Various uncertainties in the fabrication process result in diagnosis with undesirable outcomes or low efficiency. For example, this figure shows the diagnosis runtime for a bunch of 28 nanometer test chips using a commercial diagnosis tool. 17% of the diagnosis time is longer than 1,000 seconds, and 54% diagnosis failed with no actionable result. The bottom figure shows the distribution of resolution for over 9,000 diagnosed GPUs, and only 22% report a single candidate location. Given the challenges and the limited diagnosis time and resources, it would be very beneficial if we can predict the diagnosis outcomes before diagnosis is executed, like whether it would be successful, how good the quality will be, and an estimated runtime, so that we can prioritize the fail logs for best allocation of resources. Towards this goal, we develop a diagnosis previewer to predict diagnosis outcome directly from fail logs. First, from a set of diagnosed fail logs, we extracted some features as well as the corresponding diagnosis outcome to train several predictors. They work independently to predict different aspects of diagnosis outcome. Once the prediction models are trained, they can be applied to undiagnosed fail logs so that each fail log can have a profile indicating the predicted diagnosis outcomes. Then practitioners can select and sort the fail logs according to their needs so that the most promising diagnosis can be executed first to better utilize limited resources. More details of the previewer can be found in the papers listed here. However, the performance of the models degrades significantly with very little training data. For example, for a 28 nanometer test chip, 2,000 training samples are crucial to guaranteeing a 8% recall for diagnosis success prediction. This value drops to around 68% with fewer than 500 samples. Collecting sufficient training data, unfortunately, can be time-consuming. For example, one training sample may require several hours of diagnosis. Also, limited data inherently occurs during ramp-up. Therefore, it is necessary and beneficial to explore new frameworks to improve prediction performance when the amount of data is limited. On the other hand, many data sets generated during testing and the diagnosis processes are highly correlated. For example, diagnosis data of different partitions in the same design or from different rounds of tape-outs. The correlated data sets could provide some prior knowledge as a supplement to the small data set being focused upon. Based on this observation, the key idea is to borrow some prior knowledge from correlated data sets to facilitate model building. We suppose the current data at hand is quite limited, but we have a bunch of prior data which is correlated to the current data. The prior data are supposed to be sufficient in amount for training a good prior model, which encodes the prior knowledge. Then the prior model is adapted to the current data. And then it becomes a transformed model. Because this transformed model combines both prior knowledge and information from the current data, it is supposed to have a better performance than a model that is trained purely on the current limited data. The random forest is used in the previous developed diagnosis previewer because it's superior in performance over other traditional machine learning methods and do not require complex model tuning. Besides, the RF has a unique metric called out-of-bag metric, which can be used directly for model validation and is extremely suitable for small data scenarios. An RF is basically an ensemble method based on decision trees, in which a group of shallow trees are trained from a subset of samples with a subset of features. And the final result of an RF is the average of all the DTs. In order to adapt a trained RF to a new set of data, we need transfer learning techniques for each decision tree, because an RF is basically an ensemble of decision trees. And we applied 3 tree transferring strategies. Next, I will briefly introduce them one by one. The STER algorithm performs 2 types of changes to each tree, expansion and reduction. Expansion begins with a prior DT model for each leaf node of the prior model. If all the training samples in the node do not have consistent labels, then a new subtree is grown from the leaf node. For example, here's a prior tree model trained from the prior data. For the current training data, the samples that reaches node A contain both red and blue labels, so a subtree is grown from A to further divide the data. After expansion, the algorithm performs a bottom-up reduction procedure for the entire tree. For each non-leaf node, STER measures whether each subtree is necessary. If pruning the subtree leads to a smaller error, then the subtree is pruned. For example, here, the prediction error of the subtree rooted at node B is larger than the error resulting from B becoming a leaf node. Therefore, this subtree is pruned. Different from STER, which changes the tree structure and maintains the existing decision thresholds, STRUT maintains the prior DT structure and adjusts the decision threshold at each node. One important metric to reselect the splitting threshold is the information gain, which indicates the entropy reduction. And another metric called divergence gain is also introduced to force the split of samples to resemble the one resulted from the prior model. So STRUT chooses a threshold that not only brings a high information gain, but also a high divergence gain. STER and STRUT transfer DTs from different perspectives and have their respective strengths and shortcomings. STER is more flexible to modify the tree structure, but its performance can be compromised when the distribution of the prior data and the current data are not well aligned. And the STRUT, on the other hand, is robust under this scenario. However, with STRUT, the tree structure is largely restricted by the prior model. So in order to combine the advantages of STER and STRUT, we propose a third strategy called STER. STER first shifts the prior model using the threshold selection strategy of STRUT, and then tunes the local tree structure by expansion reduction procedure of STER. In this way, STER can achieve a trade-off between preservation of the prior model structure and adaptation of the current data. Now that we have 3 different transferring strategies, none of them can be guaranteed to outperform the other 2 for all data sets. The optimal strategy should be decided by the actual data set. We use the OOB metric, which is an intrinsic characteristic of random forest and does not need a separate validation set. The strategy with the highest OOB metric value is then selected as the optimal one. For the experiments, this table lists the basic information of 6 examples from our industrial partners. Designs 1 to 4 are test chips for characterizing the manufacturability of random logic. They implement similar logic functions but are different in logic gates and layout. Design 5 is a 28 nanometer test chip, and design 6 is a 90 nanometer high volume part. Designs 1 to 4 are diagnosed using the same tool, while designs 5 and 6 uses another tool. We aim to demonstrate the efficiency of transfer RF by first using prior knowledge from datasets with various levels of correlation, and 2, using different prediction objectives, and 3, using different sizes of training data. We consider 3 prediction objectives: defect count, the minimal resolution for defects, and diagnosis runtime. The first 2 objectives are defined as 2-class classification problems. For defect count prediction, positive means single defect and negative means multiple defects. For resolution, positive means resolution is smaller and equal than 3, and negative means otherwise. Runtime prediction is defined as a 4-class classification problem to predict the corresponding quantile that the runtime belongs to. And we use designs 1 to 4 to study the transferability of RFs between highly correlated designs, where the prior knowledge from one design is expected to highly correlated to another design. The 4 designs are divided into 2 groups: designs 1 and 2, and designs 3 and 4. In each group, A to B means that the data from design A is used as a prior knowledge, and the trained prior model is adapted to few training samples from design B. And we compare the performance of different transferring strategies. And here, original refers to the RF that trained only on few training samples without any transferring. In terms of defect count prediction, by incorporating prior knowledge, the prediction performance is significantly improved. For example, when transferring from design 3 to 4, we see significant increases in both AUC and accuracy compared to the original. On the other hand, none of these 3 transferring strategies is optimal for all cases, which validates the idea of using all of them as candidates and selecting the optimal one using OOB metric. For resolution prediction, we also observe similar trends. And for runtime, accuracy is shown here as a one-value metric to indicate the performance. Here we also observe the improved performance brought by transferred RF. In order to further illustrate the performance in general, we vary the size of training set and compare the optimal RF with the original RF. The optimal RF is selected with the highest OOB AUC. For defect count prediction as shown here, the AUC and accuracy for both RFs increases given more training samples. However, the transfer RF outperforms the original RF all the time and achieves up to 6-to-1 data reduction. That is, for the same level of accuracy, transferred RF only needs 20 samples, while the original RF needs 120. For resolution prediction, there are similar trends here. On the other hand, we use design 5 and 6 to study the transferability of RFs between totally different designs. These two designs are different not only in types, but also in technology nodes. This table shows the performance of different RFs in defect count and runtime prediction. Overall, we found that transfer RFs still excel original RF for design 5 to design 6. However, for design 6 to 5, transfer RFs do not show advantage in any prediction. So these observations suggest that a prior model is not always helpful and sometimes can be misleading. Fortunately, these cases can be easily detected when comparing the OOB metric of the original RF and the transferred ones. Similar to designs 1 to 4, we also examine the performance of transfer RF in defect count prediction by varying the size of training set. As shown here, the transfer RF in the small data scenario achieves up to 5-to-1 training data reduction. We also explore the region of big data when the sample number exceeds 1,000. The performance of the two RFs gradually converge, indicating that the importance of prior knowledge decreases with more data. This region, however, is not within the problem setting of this work. In conclusion, first, this work is motivated by the limited data dilemma that compromised our previously developed diagnosis previewer. We use transferred RF to fully utilize the prior data sets and adopted three tree transferring strategies. The best one is selected by using the OOB metric of the actual data sets. The experiments demonstrated that data from similar designs can be a good source of prior knowledge. However, using the data from a totally heterogeneous data can only be useful in certain cases. And possible further research direction include exploration of other kinds of prior knowledge, for example, historical data of an earlier timestamp. And another possible direction is to develop other transfer learning techniques that can be used for regression tasks. That's all for my presentation. Thanks.